So lately, with the scandals that have been going on within comics, there's been a common refrain that I've heard a lot, which is we need to listen rather than talk. We need to listen. And this is something that's really, gone on around the world with the different social issues and the problems with the violence that we've seen, with the police brutality, with all these different pieces. One of the lessons is we need to listen. But are people prepared to listen? Hey everybody, this is Perch. I want to say on the offset that this is going to be a bit of a downer kind of topic. This isn't going to end happy. I'm going to try. I'll see if I can pull a rabbit out of the hat. But this is not a super happy, optimistic video, and because it's me calling into question if things are really going to improve. I'm on board with the idea of listening. I think there's some cases where I think everybody needs to listen to each other. I think in the kind of the general world, that's true. I think that there's a lot of talking that goes on, but not a lot of listening. A lot of people make speeches, but it's one directional, which I understand is ironic given that you're listening to a video of me talking into the air. But I do read all your comments for what it's worth. And if I can ever get to a reasonable state of doing kind of live shows, I would love to just bring people on and just talk to them because that would be fun. Talk with them, probably a better way to say that. Anyway, the idea of listening is a good one. The problem is I don't really see any signs that listening is going to occur. And I say that because in the comic industry, one of the things that's been pretty consistent, not just lately, a lot of people's history or their idea of what's gone on in comics really goes back, to 2010. It's funny, there's a lot of people who have channels far bigger than mine. And they talk about comics in its kind of totality of, some things happened and then 2010 hit and then Marvel was woke. It's kind of the summation of history. But there's a lot more to comics than that. And it's not a new phenomenon that comics has been kind of one directional. Creators often will chat with fans, but there was one common thing that always strikes me, and I don't know if I'll be able to describe it well, but when I go to Comic-Con and I'd sit in on panels, and I must have seen 100 panels, easy, they always feel like speeches are being given, even when the part that always irked me, and I would make recommendations, you should just get rid of this, is when they'd call the fans up to ask questions, and the fan would ask a question, usually one that was really kind of keenly on their mind, and the answer would be very, very vague or non-existent. Like the fan would come up and say, when are we going to see Gambit back in the X-Men? And the answer from the panel would be, well, could be sooner than you think. It's like that oh, okay, so soon then? And I understand people don't want to release spoilers, but when every single answer over about 20 minutes was, well, that's a really interesting question. I'll need to think about that. It's like, that was another answer always drove me crazy. Okay, you need to think about that. And then you're going to come back with an answer? Like where? When? At this panel? Like, this panel is 10 more minutes. So you're going to think about it, and then at the last minute, you're going to come back and answer this question, or are you just going to go off and think about it and then answer who exactly? This isn't a new phenomenon. Now, a lot of people view it as new because on social media, you have kind of a creator class and you have a fan class, and there's definitely a line. One of the things that's kind of coming out in the background, and we'll see if it ultimately boils up, is that, there is a definite kind of caste system of, big time creators, indie creators, fans. And the indie creators are the ones I often feel most sorry for because they're trying to kind of, gain favor with the bigger creators. And so they'll do things like block lots of fans. I've said this before, I always find it fascinating that the big creators will, point at, those evil trolls over there, and maybe they'll make block lists, and they'll encourage a lot of the indie creators to use those block lists, but then the big creators won't use them themselves. Like, of the people I'm blocked by, the vast majority, with a couple exceptions, which are always a little surprising, but with a couple of exceptions, they're all the small indie creators who are the people who really can afford to block the least. They're the ones who need to generate a fan base, or the ones who need to kind of, come up into things. But they're so focused on gaining favor with the bigger name creators that they just kind of sit there and they get caught in this loop. That's why you see a lot of them just perpetually stuck. One of the best ways to gain a following and actually rise up in comics, in many cases, is to gain a fan support. Even if whoever those fans are, it actually helps you to go through that process. I'm not saying it's foolproof and all the rest, and you don't want the Nazis to be your fans, but still, it is a good process. I say that tongue in cheek. Please don't tell me in the comments that there are Nazis. I get it. I get it. But what I don't see in all this, I now see a lot of comments around we need to listen, in particular to women. We need to listen to their stories. Okay, I'm with you. Sounds good. Let's listen to women. But we should be also listening to fans, just in general. We should be trying to hear what they have to say, especially since the majority of fans, certainly one thing I really want to say is I respect and really appreciate the comments I get on these videos. Sounds trivial, but I really do, because there's a lot of different opinions. There's people who are hardcore Comicsgate. There are people who are hardcore anti-Comicsgate, and there's very little fighting that goes on in the comments. Do you notice that? Like, if you go down and read, there's not people slamming each other very much. It happens occasionally, but very, very little. People are stating their opinions, and they write amazing things. Like, you often will get way more value out of the comments than my videos. I'm just saying. There's really smart things that are being said there. And I read every one, and I listen, and I think about it, and it's good stuff. I think that that's healthy. And if I go and I look at a lot of the creator feeds and what I see in social media, again, with a couple exceptions, by and large, it's one directional. The creator says something, they define the conversation, and then the responses are typically all fall in the line of, I love your work. It doesn't really get into depth. And I think, as you can see in the comments of these videos, there are people on all sides of the quote-unquote aisle that are given different opinions and have problems with comics. Maybe it's the cost, maybe it's the shipping schedule, maybe it's how they're marketed or advertised. There's a lot of different views, and it's like free market research. If you're a publisher or creator, you'd be nuts not to listen, but yet a lot of them don't. In fact, at cons, many of them will brag, I don't go onto social media, I don't listen. One of the things I was stunned by is when I talked to Brian Hill or Sean Gordon Murphy, or a couple people that are coming up that I don't want to say yet, or Brett Booth, they're interested in having a conversation, which was refreshing and wonderful. And I think that's how we get things better, is we listen to each other. But there's not much listening going on. And I think if we're going to fix the industry, that's a key part to it. We need to start listening to each other. We need to start actually, hearing what we have to say, and, taking the chance that, yes, when we listen to some people, there's going to be maybe one or two maniacs that come out of the woodwork to insult us, or maybe more. But the benefit that we get from listening to the fans is going to be greater than the trolling and the nonsense coming on. But you have to be open to listen. And comics for a long time has existed, kind of like what I was trying to describe in those panels, as being, we're sitting up high, you're sitting down low, you come and you pay respect to us, and then maybe we'll give you a comment back. And I'm being a little extreme here, but that's often how it comes across. But again, this has nothing to do with politics or Trump or not Trump or any of that kind of stuff. It has been this way for quite a long time. A lot of the people that are lionized today, what's interesting about a lot of creators is that as they get older and they're not as, key to the industry, they do start to talk and listen more. It's funny how that works. But a lot of the people were just in the 80s and the 90s. They weren't listening. I think Todd McFarlane does a very good job in giving interviews and trying to have his hands on the industry, and I've seen that he's listened quite a bit today. That was not the case in the 90s. I'm just laying it out there. He was not. He was seen as a bit of a jerk. A lot of people were, and that's just kind of how the transition has passed. Now that jerk hat has been passed to other creators as it's gone. But I think that's, if there's one small thing I could push a button and just do, it would be that if creators were listening to fans more and the publishers were listening to fans more, I think we'd have a much more unified approach to fixing all this stuff. Otherwise, I just don't have a lot of hope we're actually going to fix anything. And so maybe this video didn't end as down as I thought it would be. My down part is just I don't see this getting better. I don't see a path to it. But hope springs eternal. That's what they say. Them's the breaks, kid, as Kitty Pryde would say. Anyway, what do you think? Does listening matter? How much is listening going to matter in comics? Leave me a comment below, because your comments are smarter than me. Like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter or Facebook at Comic Perch, and thanks for listening.